And we are streaming live up on youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. Do join us on that platform if you're not tuned and tied to your radios, and you can leave your comments up on the live stream as well. And we also have Ugodre with us. Good morning, Ugodre. How you doing?
Morning, sister. How are you?
Oh, hello, brother. Okay, good to have you on the
How you
show.
doing? What is?
And you can send your WhatsApp messages into 0809 440 and we are up on Twitter as well.
Well, on Twitter, it's at smooth981FM.
Okay, so use the hashtag freshlypressed981 and yes, tag us and tag our analysts at Ugodre and at Muntio C. That's with a triple E. Okay, getting into the stories. The first one up for discussion comes in from the Premium Times, and it says 2023 APC fixes presidential forms for 100 million naira, adopts indirect primaries as well. So we heard from the National Executive Committee of the APC fixing the cost of its presidential expression of interest in nomination forms. The spokesperson of the party, Felix Simorka, said that the expression of interest forms is 30 million naira, while the nomination forms will cost 70 million naira. We also saw everything else, including discounts for female candidates or potential candidates, people who are under the age of 40. Yes, there's a lot that goes into this story. Mr. C, we'd love to get your input.
Okay, thank you, Shopper. So, reading this story, the first thing that came to mind was what the president said in 2014. Now, in 2014, the price of the forms was 27.5 million naira, and he described it then as exorbitant. Now we're at 100 billion, and it's interesting to. It will be interesting to know what his thoughts are.
He actually
Now,
didn't want it as well. He still described it as exorbitant.
Yes, this now times
but
three, 4, 5.
he's the leader of the party, so if he didn't want it, he could have made it clear to the people.
He did.
Because they're just a couple of forms. You print them out from a computer. Contrast that with the PDP, the main opposition party. Their forms are 5 million for the expression of interest and 35 million for the nomination form. So why is there a huge discrepancy? What readily comes to my mind is, at the last count, 10 individuals have declared their intentions to contest for the ticket of the All People's Congress at the presidential primaries. So maybe this is one way of separating the boys from the men, literally. Now, it will also be instructive to see how their candidates pay for these forms, because a good number of them are serving public offices. So when you match their legitimate
Income.
salaries and allowances against the cost of these forms, there's a mismatch. And let's not forget that under Nigerian law, whilst serving as a public officer, you cannot engage in commercial business apart from farming. I think they've added something else. I need to confirm that. So it'll be interesting to see how this happens. But beyond the cost of the forms, they've stated the timetable for the conduct of the primaries, and the presidential primaries are between the 30th of May and the 1st of June. Why they need 2 days is what I don't understand, because for the other offices, it's a single day. And they're using indirect primaries. Why is this important? Indirect primaries means not every member of the party gets to select the candidate delegates, where we have always been. Now, in previous campaigns, we have seen delegates being wooed with money, especially foreign currency. And it will be interesting to see how this primary pans out. Because right now, you need to go to the states. And when you look at the states with the highest number of delegates, you know that you need to win. There are 10 particular states you need to win to get the ticket. And so far, one of the notable candidates, I'm not going to mention any names, is on course to take the primaries.
Now, Mr. C, very quickly, what would you say to the information that we have that female aspirants and people with disabilities are to purchase the expression of interest forms while their nomination forms are free, and that we see youth 35 and below to purchase at a 40% discount? Um,
For
what would you
nomination
for
forms.
nomination forms? What would you say to that? Do you think that is still setting the bar low enough for these people to be able to participate?
Okay, so it's a start. We must acknowledge the first move that has been made and giving them a discount. Now, whether that discount is sufficient enough to get more of the people in these categories into the political space is debatable. Because for someone who is disabled, for example, he may not have the same level or amount of opportunities a fully able-bodied person would have. So that has to be taken into context. Now, for the women too, some women, I only say a lot, some women in Nigeria are not economically powered. They still depend on their husbands for their sources of income. And that this is something that has to change. So for women in that category, unless you make both forms free, even asking them to pay for the expression of interest forms might prove a huge challenge to surmount.
It's quite interesting that we see these amounts being bandied around when we talk about these forms, because when we think about a government for the people, by the people, for the people, that needs to be a government wherein the people in positions of power are in tune with what regular average people face on a daily basis. Do you think people who can afford these sums would have that kind of knowledge of what is going on ground, especially when we look at the history and people always saying that it feels as though the government is divorced from the realities on ground?
If I can come in here, Super. So what you see here is what a lot of people have always complained about, how Nigerian politics is sort of constructed. So where you have major parties setting barriers that makes it very difficult for, perhaps younger, more qualified, more regarded, more, acceptable candidates to come up. How many candidates can afford even 50 million or 100 million for a nomination form only? There was there was, I have this, group of guys that were telling me that in some states in the South, one of the politicians there vying for state of our assembly was looking for 100 million because he has to sort out delegates. So it's a very, very expensive venture. And we've talked a lot, several times about funding, party politics and how that is done. Because if you can actually nip things like that on the board, then you typically would always churn out better leaders. So when you talk about leadership in this country, it starts from things like this. It's issues like this that determine who your leaders are. Who's going to be able to afford 100 million? Who's going to be able to afford 50 million, right? If it's not somebody who already has his hands soiled, right? So even if you're going to be getting that money from the private sector, you already would have dined with devils. You would have struck deals. And the people who are going to give you this money would expect something in return. So, party politics and how, parties are funded, I think is something that we'll probably need to look at critically. And it's been said time and time and again over the last 16, 20 years or so, nothing has changed. And by the way, what APC is basically telling us as well is that inflation has caught up with their party nomination forms. If you average it over 7, 8 years, it comes to about 25, 28 or so percent per annum. Even though they're telling us today inflation rate is 17%, but that's what it is. Prices have gone up, dollarized it. You see that the difference is not that much.
So very quickly, there are other parties, so you don't need to use the two parties. The other parties you can get in free. And I repeat again, no, seriously.
So those are the main parties.
And finally, it doesn't cost a fortune to print these forms. So why are they so expensive?
It's not printing. Surprised you're saying it's printing. Don't you understand what's going on here?
Because we need to take some comments and reactions. We need to talk to Mr. C when he said, "Oh, you spend all of this money and then it's just some of these people you spend the money 100 million naira and one person gets the ticket at the end of the day."
Yeah, but the money is coming to the party. So 100 million times 16 6 billion. It's party money, and that's what they're going to use to fund the final election.
Up on Twitter, Z-Man says, "Do you know that even foreign interests can influence our elections
Of course.
financially? There's no check on campaign funding in Nigeria. Our national security is grossly compromised."
And we have Yinka Bolu sending a message. He says, I beg, who will drop 100 million naira for Adamu Garuba? That's the main
Aye.
issue at hand. And this one, they're saying youths can pay 50 million for 50%. I hope Yaya Bello will not want to hide under that umbrella. Bolis, the one who sent in that message. Onochie says they all collude. 100 million naira isn't small money. And Dele sent a message. He says, even if the presidential tickets are given to the candidates for free, it truly doesn't matter. What matters is the intention of the people who wins the presidency, or the person who wins the presidency. He or she has the intentions of looting. He or she will loot not because of how much they spent to become president. Okay. And EK Peter sends a message. He says 100 million naira for APC forms. You can imagine how much will be spent on lobbying delegates. It makes sense. Subsidies not increased by almost 400%, and yet ASU is on strike.
And Bayo says, "APC should surprise the nation, collect the cash for the forms, and donate it to ASU." And we move on to other stories now.
All right, let's look at this story from the Vanguard newspaper. Presidency justifies Darie Nyame's pardon. Now, the presidency last night justified the presidential pardon granted to former governors Joshua Darie and Jolin Yame, saying it was in line with the constitutional provisions. The presidency also said that the pardon will in no way affect the fight against corruption, adding that the two governors were selected based on their health conditions. Ugo, what do you make of this?
I think this is basically the job of the spokesman of the president to come out and defend whatever it is that they do, no matter how inept or unfortunate it may sound or it may look. There's no justification here at all. I think Nigerians are annoyed, upset, outraged that you could, actually pardon people that were just recently convicted, and your reason is that you're pardoning them out of hell grounds. These are, governors that basically dragged the entire, security agencies and our courts for years before they were eventually convicted, and then all of a sudden, you're granting them pardon on held grounds. Victor, my issue here is it's easy to sort of to pin this on Buhari because at the end of the day, box stops on a stable. But if you actually look, you see that there's a process that actually led to all of this, and it's that process that's the problem, and the people that were involved in that process. So it's a lot of people. There's a committee made up of lawyers, judges. There's a council of state who had sat down, which includes ex-presidents, governors, and all. So these guys all sat down, looked at the entire thing, the ramifications of the decisions that they were about to take, and then still ended up deciding to pardon these guys. So it just shows you how broken the entire system is in this country and where decisions are made without ramifications or repercussions. So in a pre-election year, in some other countries, no president would ever try this because you already know that's doom for whoever it is that's coming. That's doom for your party. But here we are, the entire government, like the highest of the bodies that actually oversee, this country, that determine what happens in this country, actually sat down and decided to pardon 150 something people, including governors or ex-governors that were caught of corruption. What sort of message are you sending across? Are you saying that, if so long as you were an ex-governor or you're some ex-political leader or elected person, you caught in corruption, all you need to do is just be sick and then you will be pardoned? Does the president have the powers to pardon? Of course he does. But at the same time, you could actually have other types of, you don't have to pardon 100%. You could actually commute the sentences. You could put them on house arrest. You have to still have some sort of punitive measures in place. These guys actually haven't served any. They were only just convicted a few months ago. And besides, I think there was even a story of someone convicted of an ex-military commander convicted over Boko Haram raid that was also pardoned as well amongst the 150 people. So I don't know how else you want to look at it, but for me, I think the media spokesmen are just doing their job. It's a disgrace that this has actually happened in 2022. This is not 1999 or 2002.
All right.
This is 2022.
All right, we move on now. Let's take a look at the next article, which comes in from the Punch newspaper. NIN, telecom consumers set to sue federal government, demand policy suspension. This is subscribers under the National Association of Telecom Subscribers saying that they're set to drag the federal government to court in May, this in a bid to temporarily suspend the government's barring of their outgoing calls. Now, in response to this, they urged the federal government to extend the implementation of the policy by 3 months, and also gave the government 1 month to implement the ban. This is extended by another 3 months. This is something that has been extended quite a lot. A deadline that was postponed 8 times. What do you make of all of this?
Okay, so excuse me. Let's start from the beginning, right? Why was this policy put in place? It's a security measure.
Yes.
To ensure that they can link the owners of SIM cards to real individuals, because before now, one individual could have multiple SIM cards.
And did have multiple SIM cards.
And they've noticed that with abductions and criminal activities, they couldn't trace who was using those lines. So that birthed this policy. Now, as you rightly said, it's been extended several times. Now, Nigerians are an incredible set of human beings. Until you take drastic actions, they will not do the right thing. No one can honestly say that in the past 2 or 3 years, you do not know that you have to link your SIM card to your NIN. For new SIM purchases, it's a standard. You don't produce a name, you don't get a new SIM card. It's that simple. Now, we must break the telecom consumers here into 2 groups. The first group is those who have actually done the linking, but for strange reasons are still barred from making outgoing calls. Now, that is a problem, and that needs to be rectified very quickly. The second group is the recalcitrant group. They've had these numbers, simply can't be bothered, and maybe some of them haven't been in the country, but a good number of them have been in the country, simply cannot be bothered. And this is the only way you will get them to go and do the NIN. Now, if you do not have ulterior motives.
By the way, to which the government had said that there were about 5,500 enrollment systems, both within and outside of the country. So even if you were out of the country, you should have been able to update your information.
Yeah, so it's correct, Chopper. So it's standard practice the world over that the governments try to identify each and every citizen. They use different methods. NIN is a method we're using here. It's a unique number attached to every Nigerian. So no 2 Nigerians have the same NIN. Now, if you do not have ulterior motives, why do you not want to get an NIN? Why? So it's a good step. They can go to court. I'm waiting to see what material they're going to put in front of the judge for the suspension, because from a security perspective, it's a good policy. Whether it's achieving what it's supposed to achieve, that's a completely separate conversation. But for as long as you want to do business, register your SIM. And in any event, it's only the outgoing calls that are barred. You can still use WhatsApp calls.
Yeah.
So rather than waste energy going to court, just do the right thing.
But I just wonder why, people who are trying to register now find it very difficult to register. It's just crazy. Have you been to the places, to those centers? It's a madhouse.
All right. On WhatsApp, Angel sent a message. Aria needs the pardon because he's got the senatorial ambition and being of it would have hindered that. Ironically, El Rufai condemned Jonathan's administration for granting similar pardons. He's now becoming mute. Tayo from Aja says that this government exercises the laws and never its morals. This hell round can't fly because one of them just picked up a Senate form. Does he want to contest on poor health as well. I'm waiting for this government to say that someone was arrested on the basis of NIN. However, I'm not opposed to the suspension of NIN to Mr. C. Three suits are in court. Okay. And Cruz also sent a message. We'll get to that one.
As we go to our next story.
All right, this now is from the Punch newspaper. Fund varsities from 4 trillion naira subsidy budget, ASU tells federal government. Now, the president of ASU, Professor Emmanuel Oshodeke, has accused the federal government of not giving priority to tertiary institutions. According to him, the government had addressed issue of fuel scarcity and fuel subsidy with a budget of 4 trillion naira, whereas it ignored issues concerning university education.
That's context for you, Victor, and you really can't. I don't see how you can argue against this. If you are ready to spend 4 trillion naira on fuel subsidy that a lot of people have, classified as a waste of government resources, and you're not willing to spend 200 billion to sort out, tertiary education, then just basically shows where the priority of the government is. And beyond beyond funding subsidy with 4 trillion, what about all the intervention funds that we've been seeing around the country, particularly the ones pushed by the Central Bank of Nigeria? Those intervention funds as well could have found its way to education. You've seen intervention funds for healthcare and even for educational sector as well. So why not channel some of these funds and sort out these tertiary institutions? Because as much as ASU has been on strike for over a decade now, I've always wanted to go on strike almost a day. It's all because of this funding, and I think it's about time the government takes it seriously. So it just shows the priority of the government. If you really take education seriously, I don't think you need anyone to actually go on strike or protest or to tell you that the sort of funding we have in our educational sector today is not enough. And then people have also said, if you really can't actually fund education, why not just get your hands off it and just allow the private sector to come in and take over some of these universities? However, what you're seeing is that almost every year you're seeing government approve one new university or another. They keep approving universities that they,
12.
yeah, and that they can't fund. So it's just really funny how things happen in this country. Really, really funny. But you can't blame these lecturers, Victor.
There's also an interesting twist. The Minister of Labor and Employment has decided, oh, he wants to be president of Nigeria as well. And some Nigerians are complaining, you were not able to handle ASU strike properly. What's the rate of unemployment in the country? Now you want to pick this form for 100 million naira. Good luck anyways. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has a right to seek and pay for nomination form. That's his business. But I think on the basis of performance, not a lot of people would agree that he's performed very well. Not too sure he has performed very well, even especially as he's been one of the longest serving ministers there and has been government for that long, but hasn't really performed well.
You can't even say he's performed well. Leave the very.
Oh, okay.
Okay, then. Let's take a look at your messages before we get on to our next story. This one in Cruz says, pardon for these men. Shaking my head. This report gives me the impression that if the army at the point of trying to bomb the head of Boko Haram realize that he's ill, they can now choose to pardon him too. Whilst Nedu says, some people do not want to register their SIM cards because they simply do not trust the government. Our very personal data could be found in places we do not want and used for things we do not like.
Well, Honor Chia says that I have linked and connected my lines. Mr. C, stop supporting the government.
Okay, then. Whilst Yemi from Marina says, scary times indeed. It's funny that stolen monies by these people have caused other people to find themselves in jail, yet they will be pardoned, and other people whose lives have been affected most likely will serve full sentences. All will be well.
And Austin sends a message. We'll take this one. Can someone answer me, please? When I went to register my NIN, I did not see the Okada guys. Okay, go to the offices, the network providers. You can't see the Okada guys there too because their lines have been barred. So what's going on in this country, people? Austin from Satellite. Okay.
Okay. Punch news now. Motorists lament extortion on Lagos Bridge, slam LASMA and police. This referring to Dokpamu Bridge in the Agege area of Lagos State. The Dokpamu flyover is an access road leading to Dokpamu, Iyanokpaja, and Ikeja areas of the state. And there's apparently a signboard around the corner warning motorists against the use of the bridge after the stipulated time, to which they've now said that they are getting extorted of their money when they use the bridge by officials of the Lagos State Traffic Management Authority as well as police. Mr. C, your take on this?
Okay, thank you, Shopper. So this story speaks again to the attitude of some of our law enforcement officials. They're not there to educate or correct. They're there to extort members of the public. Now, the story says there's a sign. Is it placed in a conspicuous place that cannot be missed?
Or is it facing the side somewhere?
Yes.
Or hidden in the foliage?
So I have my doubts that it's in a conspicuous place. And don't forget that they're working on that in that area. So in the morning, it flows in one direction, in the evening flows in the other direction. Now, the story is the policemen, the law enforcement officials, both the policemen and the LASMA officials, hide at the foot of the bridge. And then when you come down, they jump out like masquerades and start extorting you. Now,
What's a visual?
if they were truly concerned about getting motorists to do the right thing, they would be at the head of the bridge. They'll be at the start, directing people not to take the bridge and take the alternative route provided. But no, they won't do that. However, what is gratifying is the police force have now given a directive that for any policeman caught extorting a member of the public, the divisional police officer for that area and the area commander will be disciplined. Even though it will be argued, is there vicarious liability in police work? The objective is to ensure that they exercise complete control and authority over the men within the jurisdiction. So Lagos State get a sign conspicuously at the start of that bridge, put your officials there and make sure that they're there to direct the flow of traffic. Point to note, when they were working on the Third Mainland Bridge, where they had the bridge closed, you had officials at the beginning directing you to take the alternative route. Nobody was hiding somewhere at the middle of the bridge to extort. So Lagos State government, speak to your officials, get them to do the right thing. They're there to correct. It's the recalcitrant ones you punish. And even then you arrest them and then give them the day in court to provide their own side of the story.
All right, Lufex on Twitter. Somebody needs to call LASMA officials to order in Lagos. It is becoming really annoying. He taxed the governor, Jide Sanwo-Olu. These guys have changed their JD from traffic management to full-blown daily extortion of motorists. And we also have Yinka Bolu sending messages again. It says, if Gary has stones, it's not the person that buys on credit that should complain. Ngige has no right to declare.
Wow. And let's end on this final message on youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. Laide Akin saying, welcome to Nigeria, where government is packaged for the highest bidder. And that's how we end. Do make sure to continue the conversation with our analysts. They are on social. On Twitter, you can find them at Monsieur C. He's actually on Twitter and Instagram at Monsieur C with a triple E and at Ugo Dre. Both of them on social media. And we are at Smooth981FM. Just go to our Twitter feed and you'll be able to connect with them from there if anything. All right, so coming up, it is going to be Grapevine Entertainment News at 8:15. Stick with us here on Smooth 98.1.